Yeah, honey, I'll be to bed in just a minute. I just gotta put this stuff in storage and then I'll be in there in just a minute. Huh. It's full. Well, I guess I'll just craft some stuff and make some room.
Approximately 10 hours later.
Okay. All right. Well, that's done. What time is it? Oh God. Welcome back, everyone. My name is Omni, and what you just saw pretty much sums up my first couple weeks in New World. Now that I've gotten 60, I wanted to pass along my thoughts on the game in its current state, and maybe help you with the decision as to whether or not you're going to play. Before I start, though, I want to let viewers know that every like, comment, and especially sub will directly benefit an animal shelter, as we are doing donations to local animal shelters at every single major subscription interval. We doubled our pledged donation of $100 from hitting 500 subs to $200, as you can see in the receipt here, and we'll be donating again at 1,000 subs. So, make sure you do the thing with the buttons. Alright? Well, let's get into it. If I'm being honest, I was not entirely optimistic about New World's release. In fact, for a while I wasn't convinced it would release at all. It was announced back in 2016, and while we all assumed at that time it would go off without a hitch, considering that Amazon has more money than God, things started to look a little bleak in the couple years prior to release. Amazon Game Studios canceled its other two projects, citing the inability to see a sustained future after sinking a very large amount of money into them, which potentially could have been somewhere between $80 to $100 million large. A fledgling development company starting that far in the red is bound to make even Jeff Bezos sweat a little bit. When the release date was pushed back not once, but twice prior to launch, even though the entire studio was focused on this singular title, I started to wonder if they were going to be able to pull it off at all. Well, fast forward to September 28th, and they've actually managed one of the smoother MMORPG launches I've been a part of. In fact, I'm struggling to remember a launch that had so few issues all the way back to EverQuest with regards to just how smooth the actual gameplay was. Now, of course, this assumes that you could stay logged in and avoid the massive queue times. For the first week after launch, you either had to log on early enough to dodge the queue entirely, or be subject to potentially hours of waiting just to log on. It's a point of debate which I'll not take sides on as to whether or not Amazon worked fast enough or hard enough to resolve these queues, considering the resources they had at their disposal. But that, in my opinion, is really the only thing hanging over the head of this release and making it anything less than very impressive. With the server issues now resolved, it's easy to see how much better this game is than most of its counterparts have been at their respective launch times. Once inside of New World, you'll be prompted to select a region, and then a server or a world. It's worth noting that as of the time of this video, characters cannot be transferred between regions, and that you can only have one character per world set. On top of this, character names are globally unavailable once used, so you'll need to spend a bit of time deciding what you're going to do if you're playing with friends or potentially need to move in the future. Once you've done that, you'll be shown a brief cutscene which tells you how you arrive at the island of Aeternum. Weaved into this story is the character creation process. The first thing seasoned MMO players will probably notice is the complete lack of stats and attributes to assign, or even a class to select. Interestingly, New World has chosen to deviate from the standard RPG experience with regards to the character creation and progression, in that any character can do anything. For a price, of course. Want to be a spell-slinging, great axe-wielding mad lad? You can do that. Want to be a rogue that heals yourself? Yeah, you can do that too. The flexibility this provides is pretty cool, and probably at least part of the reason you're only allowed one character per world set. All of your abilities will come from the weapons you choose to use and their respective levels, rather than class selection and a talent tree. Each weapon has one or more main attributes which lend to that weapon's damage and overall effectiveness. As you gain experience with each weapon, you unlock new and of course more powerful abilities. At any time, you can respec your points in these weapons, and this is free until you reach level 11 in each weapon, after which it costs Azoth based on your level. At level 20, it will cost you 200 Azoth to respec. Should you change weapons to something that your attribute allocation no longer supports, you can also respec your attributes for gold. At level 60, this costs you 500 gold, but it's much cheaper at the lower levels and free all the way up to level 20, so some experimentation is encouraged. Once you're beyond the character creation, you're thrust into the combat tutorial. The combat system in this game is very easy to learn with only 3 abilities beyond your standard attacks, dodges, and blocks. I would like to say that the combat system in the game is highly polished, but there are a few issues with bows, muskets, and spells with regards to hit registration, especially once your target closes to melee range. Beyond that, the combat's pretty fluid and engaging. Those of you who watched my Crowfall videos know that I found the open world PvE to be pretty uninspiring and easy in this particular game. It seems to still be the case, but the expeditions are where the combat system really gets entertaining and challenging. Even the lowest level expedition can be challenging if you go into it too soon or unprepared. These expeditions do a great job of breaking the monotony of leveling solo and grinding out trade skills. They're very engaging and require some thought process to progress through for first-timers. The fight mechanics are not exactly a departure from standard issue MMO don't stand in the fire or aggro the whelps type of thing, but they can take time to figure out for those who are unpracticed. I can't wait to see what Amazon has in mind for the raid content. I'm hoping that they keep it just as challenging, or worse. The world itself, well, it's breathtaking. As I progressed to 60, I kept finding myself blown away by the new areas and how visually appealing the game is overall. I constantly found myself saying, well, this is the prettiest area I've ever seen in a video game. And then 4 hours later, I'd be saying the same exact thing. I mean, just look at this. Have you ever seen anything like this in an MMO? To make the world feel even more real, they've also done an incredible job with the ambient audio and soundtrack. You'll hear wind rushing through the trees, the crackle of alchemic nodes, and all manner of creature sounds based on whatever environment you're in. I can't stress enough how important sound is in these games, and a lot of developers seem to underdo it. This game, however, seems to excel. It's pretty easy to lose yourself in this world. Speaking of nodes, the trade skill system in this game was great even in the beta. In fact, it's so good that there's an argument to be made that there's just too much to do in this game with regards to the trade skills. There's something that you could be doing at literally every moment that you're logged in to progress your character in some way, shape, or form. The gathering skills are pretty standard hit node and pray to RNG god outside of fishing, which has its own minigame. All of the gathering skills are easy to understand and feel pretty balanced in their progression. The crafting skills are entertaining, but their utility is currently a little hobbled by what I would consider to be a very broken economy. I'm sure at some point the initial leveling surge will taper off and the economy will stabilize, but at this point it's pretty difficult to use crafting to make any money or even anything anyone will want to use unless you're ahead of the leveling curve. But even then, you'll have a bevy of items you can craft which are borderline useless since most people can get better through quests or expeditions. Currently, the market is pretty flooded with expedition gear, so you're lucky if you even get the cost of your mats back from listing your items for sale on the market. This lasts for entire stretches of gear score at times depending on where the leveling curve is at. Whether or not this will change in the future, I have no idea, but I would assume Amazon will be taking a close look at the economy as they nail down the details. Moving on to everyone's favorite topic, the PvP. One of the things I did not like about this game in the open beta is still present and will probably never change. Unfortunately, the flagging system does this game and every other game in the genre a disservice in my opinion. I do understand why this system is in place, but I feel the old method of splitting servers into PvP versus PvE, or maybe even a separate PvP exclusive area, creates a far more appealing experience, especially for those like myself who enjoy the excitement of competition in these games. As it stands, if you don't want to engage other players in the game, you never really have to. You can simply Care Bear your way to 60 and never touch PvP if you don't want to. While I feel any player should have the right to make that decision, I also feel that in its current format, it allows for some fairly interesting reconnaissance tactics. One of the most important, if not the most important function of PvP in this game is war. Wars decide who owns the towns. Owning a town is arguably the pinnacle of achievement in the game currently. As you can imagine, mobilizing a force large enough to begin the process to take a town from another faction is challenging, to say the least. When attempting to trigger large wars, groups of players are routinely called out in faction chat by non-flagged players who are able to provide constant reconnaissance with no fear of consequences based on their inability to be engaged. The war itself, of course, is instanced, so this doesn't necessarily have a bearing on the outcome of that once it's declared, but it does seem a little silly to me that an entire evening of a guild's PvP missions can be wasted if you run into a few unflagged players providing information to a larger guild willing to track your group down in order to prevent the war from happening in the first place. What little experience I have inside of wars has led me to the conclusion that there are a couple of issues affecting them currently, but they're pretty smooth. It seems that Amazon has underestimated not only the resourcefulness of its players, but also their willingness to completely disregard their moral compass in order to win. There are reports of wars being won by all sorts of unscrupulous means, one of which being spam reporting the officers of the opposing guild and its members to prevent them from even participating in the war in the first place. Yeah, that's actually happened. All in all, the PvP is decent. The wars function pretty well for as large scale as they are, and looking around at other throne war combat games that I'm not going to name, it seems to be pretty smooth. The systems in place, while a bit buggy, are great in concept and will just require some time to balance and polish. For as polished and pretty as this game is, there are some pretty silly problems with the UI and a lot of missing creature comforts. Things like tracking on the compass breaking constantly, or the market interface being borderline useless. I am sure these things will be worked on, and they seem pretty easy to fix with some player feedback. The only other really frustrating thing I've encountered to this point is the abundance of input lag, specifically for me while self-healing or casting. It's difficult to tell what's causing this, but I can tell you that unmuting the channels in your feed does improve it, which seems a little weird to me, but it is what it is. And then finally, the endgame in New World is an interesting hodgepodge of trade skill leveling, PvP faction rep grinding, and I really think Amazon Studios has done a good job of creating enough variety in the gameplay where even at max level I feel like I have plenty of things I can do to progress. I will say that if you're a solo player, this might change a little bit over time as you start capping your trade skills and you have all your faction gear, because there might not be that much to do outside of participating in the endgame PvP, which almost requires a large guild to get the most enjoyment out of. So the real question you came here to have answered is probably whether or not this game is worth it to play. The short answer to that question is yes, I believe it is. It is really hard for me to imagine a situation where someone who likes MMOs or RPGs not being able to find something that they enjoy doing in this game. There just seems to be something for everyone. The game is incredibly smooth for the most part, and the immersion factor is off the charts. There really are no detrimental issues I can think of which have diminished my experience with the game significantly beyond those initial cues. And with those behind us, hopefully it's smooth sailing ahead. Well, that's it for the video. I hope it was helpful, and as always, if you have questions, please feel free to reach out in the comments or find my Discord link in the description. Feel free to shoot me a message. If you're looking for a guild in New World, you can find our guild Discord in the description as well. And to all my syndicate brothers, remember, grape together strong.